Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the I'm Doing Great podcast with myself, Mike, and our co-host, Gina. We have a very, very special person in the studio today. Someone that everybody was telling us to get.
Everybody's been begging to have him on.
Yes. And then after this episode, they'll all leave. They'll all unsubscribe.
Especially the women.
No interest left in the channel unless this guy's on every day. Gina, why don't you introduce him?
He's a bright young man, I think, who has been ignored and intentionally ostracized by many conservatives. I've always been confused as to why. I don't watch his live streams, but I've seen a lot of clips, and I'm very intrigued by this guest and a lot of what he has to say. And I think that he has been painted in an unfair light in the conservative movement, especially. I mean, obviously leftists hate him, but I find it very curious and interesting that most conservatives, obviously they're all mainstream conservatives, they just refuse to have him on their show, and they refuse to listen to him, and they call him Nazi, sexist, misogynist, and they use all the same tactics that leftists use towards him. But like I said, I think he has a lot of interesting things to say, and he is, of course, the Rosa Parks of the young generation of America. Everybody, Nick Fuentes, thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it worked out great. So you were driving up from Florida, right, where you had AFKAP?
That's right. Yeah, okay. Driving up from Orlando to Chicago.
Yeah, and before we get into AFKAP, for those of you who don't know, Nick is on a no-fly list.
That's right. Yeah, so I can't board an airplane in America, so I just have to drive everywhere now.
Do they give you like a cool little certificate or something that at least you could frame?
No, yeah, that's the thing. I didn't even know I was on it until I went to the airport, and then they told me, yeah, you can't get on the plane today. Because I would do that.
Right, yeah, so would I. Oh, definitely. It's got to be an honor.
Wait, yeah. I forgot. What was the thing that got you put on the no-fly list?
January 6th.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Gina, can you just point the mic at your mouth?
Is it up a little bit?
No, it's just pointed off and to the left. Just point it at, like, turn the base and point it at your mouth.
How's that? There we go. Better.
Nice. Cool. Great.
So it was January 6th. I remember that there were photos circulating and people were like, Nick Fuentes was here, but some of the photos weren't even of you. They were just of some lookalike.
Yeah. And the guy didn't even look like me. It was a totally pixelated, like low-res picture screenshot, actually, from a live stream. And he was wearing a different outfit. I was wearing a suit and like a long coat. And this guy had a beanie and a scarf and like a regular jacket. I'm like... But that's probably what did it, because that's what triggered the investigation, as people said I was in there.
Wait, but you were just there? Or they're saying you were just there, you had something to do with it, which is why you're on the no-fly list, or were you inside the Capitol?
They were saying I was in the Capitol because of that picture, but I was outside. Oh, I was on the lawn, so I never entered.
You were never even in there. Mm-hmm. That's so bizarre. So this is why we joke and say that Nick is the Rosa Parks of the younger generation, because before you got kicked off of Twitter, I was just telling you before we started rolling that probably my favorite tweet of yours was, well, I've got it worse than Rosa Parks because at least they let her on the bus, which I thought was great. So tell us a little bit about AFKAP. I know you had your third annual AFKAP. What is it and how did it go this year?
Yes. So this is our annual conference. It stands for America First Political Action Conference. This is our third, sort of like technically our fourth one. It was our biggest one ever. We had 1,200 people there. We had our special guest was Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, representative from Georgia. And it went very well. I mean, it did what it was supposed to do. I think we made big waves, obviously in the national media. And it was kind of a victory lap for us because, we've been put through hell. We've been censored. We've been persecuted by the government. And there was a lot of people wondering if we would even survive, if we would even be here at this point. And the point of AFKAP 3 was to say, yeah, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to win. We're going to take it all the way. So I thought it was a great conference.
So tell our audience, what does America First actually mean?
Well, it's sort of interesting. I defined it last year because a lot of people call themselves America First these days. I'm not the only one. But it means something very specific. And it's sort of defines itself against the idea that America is an idea. Because we hear from a lot of conservatives that it's about our Constitution, it's about our creed, it's about America is a concept. And America First says, no, America's a nation. It's a people in a place, and the people of America have to be the priority for the government, because really what's going on is corruption. People don't really use that word, but that's what it is. It's the government, and the entire system is completely corrupt, completely sold out. It's basically like a criminal syndicate is what it is. And so America First is saying we need to get all these people in the regime out of power and put people in there that are going to put the economic, social, every other interest of the American people before the super mob, before other countries, before lobbyists. So that's what we're trying to do.
Sounds like a horrible fucking idea.
Right?
Jesus Christ. I had a question for you before, before the other people's questions. Mine is more important. But just hearing you say that, why can Ukrainians consider themselves nationalists and that's fine? Why can Palestinians do the same thing? Why does the media and academia label someone who lives in America as an American citizen and considers himself a nationalist? Why is that person then demonized and personified as a threat? I don't. Do you have you thought about that?
Yes. And the reason why is because the elites are not, and this is sort of important thing for people to realize, the elites do not consider themselves Americans. They're really in kind of a different country than us. I describe them on my show. They're post-national, anti-national, or, they reject the idea of nations at all. They don't believe in America as a nation. They see themselves as global citizens, part of like a global community. And the reason for this is because they're of the globe. They're from the globe. They're from everywhere. In some cases they're immigrants. In some cases they're ampersands or something like that. But they reject the idea that there even is an America. And so when you have people rising up and saying, America is a distinct nation with a distinct identity, this actually challenges their identity, but it also challenges their interest. Because if America asserts a distinct identity and a separate interest, well, then this is very problematic for the intelligence community, for the multinational corporations, for everybody that profits from immigration and free trade and all these things going on. So really, it's a challenge to their financial interests. It's bad for business for them, is ultimately, I think, why.
Yeah. Do you think that Teddy Roosevelt, who was, at one point called a progressive, I never thought that. Do you think that he would be considered a fascist when saying something like, and this is something that he did say, he was saying to immigrants who come here that if anything, they should be American first.
Yeah.
And I think something like that is a controversial statement being said, that would be considered a controversial statement being said today. I don't know where that changed. It's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly where it changed, but it makes sense what you're saying as far as someone considering themselves a citizen of the globe. And that's why it's a red flag when anyone says the word planet. I don't like that.
Yes.
Yeah, when someone says planet, I tend to sort of zone out.
It's just so funny to me how American expats, they'll go to live in a different country and they feel like it's very respectful for them to speak the language, to adopt the culture, and to respect whatever country's culture they go to. But for Americans to expect and in a way demand immigrants to come to America and adopt our culture, that is in some way bigoted.
We don't have a culture.
Yeah, we that's the answer. We don't have a culture.
There's no American
which is
culture.
Retarded. It is one of the most retarded things I've ever heard. But I do think that we should expect immigrants to come in and accept our culture because I'm something we talk about all the time. This is the best culture. And it's just insane to me that it's bigoted. Americans can go to Mexico or go to, I don't know, Indonesia and live there and adopt the Indonesian culture. And it's such a great thing. But to expect immigrants to come here and accept American culture is just...
It's a very odd thing because anecdotally, every diehard American immigrant who's come here that I've spoken to is just so excited about becoming an American. You know what I mean? It's these people who wait for 20 years that when it finally happens and they get that citizenship, they're elated and over the moon. You know what I mean? Like when my grandfather came here, he was sadly killed shortly after he became a citizen, but he was just so excited.
Yeah.
And I feel like there are people, especially immigrants, there are people who still feel that way coming in. But I think even seeing the way that America's devolving, they're probably like, I'm not going there.
Well,
anymore.
now that we're on the immigration train, let's talk a little bit about immigration and where you stand on that. Are you someone who thinks that we should just close the borders altogether for a while and even have put a hard stop on legal immigration?
Yes, I think there should be no more immigration indefinitely because we just have too many people right now, and they're pouring in, and this is where I would draw a line even against Trump, is it's not just illegal immigration, it's legal immigration too. And what meaningfully is the difference between illegal and legal? Because illegal immigrants these days, there's not really much that they don't have access to that citizens do. Citizenship no longer confers any really exclusive benefits that you wouldn't get if you were a tourist, a visa holder, or even an illegal. I mean, in some of these cities, they give out IDs, they give out benefits. They're even talking about having them vote in local elections. So
they're doing it.
Yeah.
In New York, they're doing it.
They're doing it.
Yeah, in New
They
York
passed
City.
the bill. Yeah.
Right. So it's real. It's happening. And what's more is it gets to the point of what are we really trying to do here? People say, well, they have to come here legally. Well, why do they have to come here at all? I mean, why do we need people here that don't speak English, are not educated, have nothing to offer us, and people that are going to change the country? I mean, what a lot of people don't think about is these immigrants got to go somewhere. And, they're going to come to your neighborhood. They're going to come to your city eventually, and they're going to change it. They're going to meaningfully change the way that it is. And if you love your home, why would you want that to happen? Mm-hmm. People love to talk about diversity and all this. Well, I come from Chicago, 5 generations in Chicago. And the whole city's been transformed by immigration. And so Taylor Street, which was once an Italian neighborhood, and, that's where my grandparents grew up and so on, it now is completely unrecognizable. And so why would we want that to happen? Legal, illegal, it doesn't matter. They're changing the character of the country. And our country was great before. Now it sucks. So why would we want more of this? Let's keep America the way that it was. Let's make it better,
Japan is such an interesting example of that because super strict immigration. I mean,
some of the strictest in the world.
If I'm planning on going to Japan, there's no way I'm going there without already knowing how to speak Japanese, already aware of the culture. It wouldn't make any sort of sense.
And even if you could speak Japanese fluently, they would still look at you and be like, what are you doing here? You
Yeah.
don't belong here. When you did an interview with Milo a couple years ago, which I really enjoyed, I thought it was really hilarious. The best clip is when he was like, "Oh, you're against interracial marriage, but it's okay because I'm gay." You were like, "No, it's actually worse because you're a homosexual."
Well, not anymore, folks.
But there was one part in there where you talked about how, what's the point of diversity? Is there anything good that comes from diversity? I'd like you to talk a little bit about that because, I mean, obviously leftists will use the phrase that diversity is America's strength, but you hear it a lot too with mainstream conservatives. You hear it a lot from people like Turning Point and Charlie Kirk, and it's almost as if they're pandering when they talk about the strength of diversity, and it's a really good thing that we have people who come here. As long as it's legal, it's a really good thing to have that diverse population. So speak a little bit about diversity and how it's not good for America.
Sure, yeah, and you're right. It's conservatives and liberals. They say diversity is a strength. And, I started to realize when I was younger, I was thinking to myself, because this is the argument. We're told America's exceptional, and why? For the past 30 years, which is different. In the old days, they used to say America's great because it's Christian, or America's great because it's European. For the past 30 years, people have said, well, America's exceptional because we take the best and brightest from around the world and we have diversity. And I would think to myself, what really are the tangible benefits of diversity? Some of the arguments they give is, well, Black or Hispanic people can give like a different perspective. And I'm thinking but what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. Because when you're trying to create a system, when you're trying to create any kind of organization, the more difference there is and the more intense those differences are, the weaker and more dysfunctional and incoherent it makes the organization. So, if you were to have a neighborhood full of people that were all completely the same versus a neighborhood where people were completely different, they believed strongly in different gods, spoke different languages, had different races, tribes, the latter neighborhood would be constantly at war. Why would it be better to have constant exposure and dense populations living closely together where one is Jewish and one is Muslim and they hate each other, and one's Palestinian, one's Israeli, one's Albanian and Serbian, and they don't even speak the same language? How can anybody say that would make that neighborhood stronger or better and not like a total mess and a total disaster? So, if anything, it's the opposite. We want homogeneity where we can get it. We want coherence. We want a society where people are on the same page and they can get along together. Not a place where, it's schizophrenic, which is kind of like what we've created here. It's chaos.
Well, it's like how leftists like to point to the Nordic countries and they say, oh, well, the best system is in Norway, Denmark, where they have all these, the welfare state. And one of the reasons why people have no problem paying 60% taxes and establishing a welfare state is because of the homogeneity. They feel like everyone in their country and their neighbor is their brother because they're from the same place. I mean, of course, they also have a fraction of the population. It's like Denmark is a population of LA. But I mean, it also has to do with the fact that they are all from the same place. And so they really feel that brotherhood and that familial sort of feeling that America really, really lacks. So I see what you're saying, but I think a lot of people, they like to attack you and say, oh, well, so, what if there's a Muslim person or a person from, Asia or somewhere that has adopted the American culture? Is that somebody that you don't want in America? And that's obviously not what you're saying.
Right. And here's the thing. America can obviously have people that are different, but, you almost have to sort of reframe the issue because they say, oh, what? You don't want immigration. What are you, racist or something? What's being proposed to us, propositionally positive, is to remake America. Take America, which it was one way, radically transform it into something else through massive, unprecedented immigration from like the worst places in the world to make a new nation. And then they're like, oh, well, if you're not okay with this proposition, which is underway, there's something wrong with you. What are the arguments in favor of this? This is something that is underway. It's yet to be completed, but why don't we hear an argument from the proponents of diversity? Why is this better for me? Why is this better for America? It's always on us to say, well, oh, so these guys aren't American or this and that. And it's like, this is being done to our country. This is like a very radical transformation that is being imposed on us. And it's almost like we have to argue like why it shouldn't happen. Shouldn't they have to make the case for why it should happen? America was working. It wasn't broken. It seems to be getting worse. And yet, again, we're always on the defensive, always on the back foot, explaining why, why we should not have to have this happen to us. I think it should be on them to explain, what exactly is the benefit here.
Can a proponent of that idea, could they possibly point to like Ellis Island in the early 1900s, like that sort of historical reference? Or is there a little bit of nuance there because the country was completely different back then? And because I would assume the majority of those immigrants who came here, not immediately, but over time, pretty much assimilated as as Americans. I don't know. Could they say, look at New York in the early 1900s, look at all the different types of people. But again, the large majority of these people were coming from European countries.
Right. Yeah. There's another thing I wanted to ask you about, which we've talked about on the show before, interracial marriage.
A lot of people were asking about this.
All three of us are technically products of interracial marriages.
All three of us who? Nick?
Yeah, because your dad is...
he's half Mexican.
He's half Mexican, so not as much.
That's where the Fuentes come from.
Yeah.
Sure,
but I think this is a really interesting topic. Our audience likes to hear about it. One of our first episodes, Mike and I kind of got into it and just talked about what are the effects of interracial marriage. And so I heard you talk about it a little bit in your interview with Milo, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, this is like my most controversial take. Everyone's always asking me. And I'm not a hater about it, and I'll say this: I don't think it's morally wrong necessarily, but I'm just old-fashioned in a certain sense. Like I tell people, like I want a white kid. I'm white. I have green eyes. I have light skin. I have wavy brown hair. I want my kid to look like me. I don't want to have a black kid. It's not because I don't have,
Super bigoted. Imagine preferences are bigoted now. So to interject, are you familiar with Dr. Umar Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, obviously like Killer Mike, and they talk about this. They say they think blacks should date and marry within their own race. And obviously I don't even think that that's a controversial idea because it makes sense just as far as ideals, background, culture, even, to boil it down to the lowest point and say like, well, there are food differences and stuff like that. But it would make sense that maybe less problems would arise from a couple who is, either, but even then, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I don't know how I feel about this. I'm really interested to hear how you feel about this.
Last time, I'll interject before you go on too, is that you can't deny that it is objectively more difficult to have an interracial marriage. My parents are a great example. It was very difficult. My dad's born and raised in America, but he comes from an Italian family in New York, and he met my mom in South Korea, and it was a huge adjustment period to get married there and to bring my mom to New York and move in with his American family. And it was a not only to say a culture shock, but it was a really big strain on their marriage. in the first few years that they were together. And, they weather the storm and they're still together and they believe they're soulmates. But you cannot deny, and they, of course, admit this too, that it is so much harder to maintain a strong marriage and to go down the path of having a strong nuclear family when you have people from completely different worlds. So I can kind of understand what you're saying, but keep going with what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I was telling this to Louis Theroux. I'm surprised because I did the Louis Theroux documentary, and we talked about this for a long time. And, ultimately, the thing is, like, I could give you a lot of reasons why it's a bad idea, like, the higher likelihood of mental illness for the children, higher rates of domestic violence, and higher rates of divorce, and so on. But that would be a rationalization. I just think people should stick with their own. I just think that I love my identity and I want my kids to participate in that, because I come from, I identify with the Italian side of my family and I want an Italian family. I'm Irish and Mexican and it doesn't need to be, people always use that to say, oh, well, your last name's Fuentes. It doesn't need to be more complicated than it is. I think people generally understand what it means, and by the way, like every other race is able to do this. You always have the stereotypical, black people like, hey, I want you to be a nice black girl, and Asian people,
what's
you marry a nice Chinese, whatever.
Literally, yeah.
Right?
My mom always told me, she said, marry your own kind. And I was like, what kind do I have? It's not like I'm full Korean. I'm half Korean, half Italian. But my husband is half Italian, half Japanese.
Wait, have you ever pushed back against your mom though?
When I was younger, when I was a young idiot liberal, I cried once because she told me she flat out said that sorry, mom. She's like kind of said, if you can help it, don't marry a black guy. It's the same thing that what you just said. Not because they're black, but because she's like, it will be so much harder for your child to be a mixed race and feel like they don't belong. And she was like, plus you want to marry your own kind and have a kid who looks like you. And so I totally get what you're saying. That's why I laughed when he said, I want my own kind. Like my mom used to joke. Not joke. She used to say that to me and then I would jokingly get upset at her, but I get what you're saying.
From an aesthetic point of view.
Right.
Yeah.
In Korean culture, my mom says that when a couple looks like they could be related, it's actually, they see that as a good thing. They see that it's probably going to be a strong marriage and they're going to have a really strong family. And people, they think that they're being mean online, like, well, you and your husband look like you're related. I'm like, thank you, because that means that we're meant to be together.
Same with me and my wife. Yeah, my wife's red hair too.
Yeah, you guys too. Yeah.
But we have an adorable daughter.
We do too.
Kind of looks the way I imagined my child to look.
Same. So. Yeah, she does look like the mix of the two of you. Do we want to get into questions? Or is there anything else you want to say about interracial marriage?
No, I think I'm
actually.
Would a conversation with like you and Killer Mike talking about interracial marriages last about 5 minutes? Because the two of you guys would probably be like, yeah, we agree.
Yeah, we do. We dap each other up. Right. Be like, what's up? We're
Black
good.
People love you.
Yeah. I love black people. Do you believe me? Do you believe me? I do.
I think it's so funny when Nick says that because like he's serious, but not. But you are serious. Like
yeah, I do. Well, and it's funny.
They can't imagine that he would say that. Though.
I know.
That's why it's funny.
What's funny to me is that people think you're being racist by saying that, but you actually mean it.
Yeah, it's true. I love everybody. I love blacks and. Chinese and Mexicans. I love them all.
I think you're hilarious. I was telling Bryson yesterday on the show that before it got wiped from the internet, my favorite Twitter account was Nick Fuentes out of context.
Oh yeah.
I don't know who made that. I'm sure it was some groiper, but I was not able to send you videos before it got deplatformed. It was just the clips taken out of your live streams would just make me laugh. I just think he's funny.
Well, here's the question, and maybe you can offer some sort of advice. How are we going to label the description of the video? I was thinking we put Fick Nuentes. So, you know what I mean? Just because I have a feeling you search his name, nothing comes up, or people have made clips that only last like 5 minutes, nothing really long. I feel like if we put, episode 17, Nick Fuentes, the algorithm's going to totally destroy it. I don't mind doing it. What do you think we should do? Do you just put it straight out there?
Fick Nuentes.
Yeah, I think that could work.
Yeah. Or you could just say like Nick Fuentes lookalike.
Well, I also don't want Nick to be like, oh, what a pussy. Just put my fucking name up there.
Well, I also don't want his episode to be taken down.
Exactly. That's
I want
it
to be up because I was on YouTube the other day just searching your name and just the videos that are up are just like.
Yeah, they're weird.
It's weird.
Yeah, because it's curated. They curate all the results based on my my name. Maybe Nick Fuentes. Alex Jones always calls me Fuentes.
Fuentes?
That's a good one.
Nick Fuentes?
Yeah.
Okay, we could do that.
We could do that.
All right, you want to get into some questions?
Yeah, let's
start with YouTube, because YouTube was really interesting, and we'll start with a little bit of a softball first. And the question is that you started in radio talking about music. What are some of your favorite bands or music you enjoy listening to currently?
Well, Kanye West is my favorite of all time. I think
so many people asked me to ask him about Kanye.
Really?
I thought they were joking. I was like, oh, there's no way Nick is a huge Kanye fan. But
oh, yeah, he's my favorite. Well, and it's funny because everyone calls me racist, but my Spotify is almost like all black music. I mean, I like a lot of music.
I'm not racist.
Really?
I love black music.
Hey, well, like, soul and
Right.
Motown
Yeah.
and R&B. Literally, like, I
you go
Want You
deep?
by Marvin Gaye. That is the blackest album, It's hardcore.
How do you feel about Otis Redding? You like Otis
I
Redding?
like Otis Redding, yeah.
Okay,
I
Al
like
Green?
James Brown, Al Green,
Oh, nice.
Teddy Pendergrass, Luther.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I love all that stuff.
This is incredibly surprising.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did not expect this.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yes.
love blacks, 100%.
This is going to get great for this little sizzle reel. Okay, now this is a really in-depth question, and I've changed the wording around because they ask him, Nick, and I just changed the pronouns. You invoke Christianity in your quest for a return to tradition, but it seems that you often give precedence to the cultural and aesthetic residues of the religion over its metaphysical and moral precepts. For example, the caricature of the Chad alpha male to white boy summer as far as ideology is concerned. You place more faith in the axioms of the European Enlightenment, individual liberty, free speech, and ironically, secularism, than those of the traditional Christianity, now reduced to little more than a signifier of white Western heritage. Given this, I'd like to hear why he thinks his movement aligns with Christianity morally and metaphysically.
I would say a lot of that just isn't true. I do not support the Enlightenment. I do not support individual liberty or even like free speech in itself. No, I'm a hardcore reactionary. I'm like counter Enlightenment. I used to be against literacy for a long time, and everyone got mad at me because I would say, no, don't read books. And people would say, what? You're criticizing self-improvement? And I would say, don't read books. It won't make you smarter. Read the Bible. And people got mad at me for that. So no, I think I'm very counter Enlightenment, very reactionary. And if anything, it's the opposite, because I don't like the performative Christianity. I don't pray publicly on my show. People have tried to get me to do this for like documentaries and stuff. They say like, let's film you in church. Let's film you doing this. And I say, it's not a performance. My religion's, I perform it privately. But I talk about it frequently on the show. And even in AFKAP 3, the whole night was about God and Christianity. The whole night was about trusting his plan, all this kind of stuff. So, if anything, I think it's the reverse.
Are you Catholic?
Yes.
Okay. Get out of here.
Yeah, I'm Protestant.
Oh, no. We'll pray for you.
What do you think the future holds for... where is it? I wrote this. What do you think the future holds for America, taking into account that many conservative and reactionary thinkers have predicted its decline or collapse in the following decades, such as Pat Buchanan?
I think they're right. I think they're onto something. America's headed for a lot of problems. It's hard to see how there won't be something cataclysmic because it's coming apart in every way. Where to even begin? The currency, that's obviously very relevant right now. And that's been a disaster for decades now. Really since the 70s, but especially since the housing bust, near zero interest rates for 15 years, double the money supply last year. Like, you can't do that to a country. So the economy is headed for bust. But then you've also got all these, the corruption, you've got the pensions, the unions, like there's so many like systemic problems that are not easy to fix that something's going to give, and then it's just going to be a death spiral, in my opinion. So we're in for a real problem in the next 2 decades.
So speaking of Pat Buchanan, do you have any other, maybe I'm not saying that he is, but any political, I'll use the word heroes, or people that you admire?
Favorite political leaders. Well, honestly, I've been talking up Stalin a lot on my show lately.
Oh, yeah?
That's sort of like a surprising one. But I've always been a fan
I'll
of...
say historical rather than political.
Historical or political. Yeah, well, Donald Trump. Donald Trump's really my biggest hero because the guy's like... I think he's the greatest man in the world today, 21st century. I like Putin a lot, obviously. I've been talking about that lately. I'm trying to think who else was influential. Sort of de Maistre was very influential. Joseph de Maistre was a French counter-Enlightenment philosopher. But I don't really, the thing is, I don't do a lot of reading these days. I did a lot of reading in high school and college, and then I just been working for the past 5 years, so I don't really do a ton of reading, but those would be some of my
Let's get into Putin really quick now that he mentioned him. Talk us through a little bit about why you like Putin and what's going on in Ukraine, because we've talked about it on the show. I mean, I kind of
I have a very ignorant
and I also just get
really
annoyed with everyone pro-Ukraine. It just kind of, annoys me. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on Putin and Ukraine and all that.
Sure. Well, I could go on for a long, long time on this because there's so much to cover. But the main thing is this. What people have to realize is in 97, NATO begins to expand, right? 91, the Soviet Union collapses, Warsaw Pact comes apart, all these nations become independent, nations that were historically part of the Russian Empire. So in Central Asia and Eastern Europe. The thing about Russia is they have to, they're so big that their foreign policy is based on, like any country, it's based on defending their borders. And Russia has this big geography problem where it's so big and it's got such a great border and it's situated in such a precarious place where it's difficult to defend these borders that that's what its foreign policy is motivated by. It's finding the best way to defend its borders. What it has to do in Eastern Europe, to make it quick, is they have to shorten their border with the West. The Great European Plain is shaped like a funnel, and in East Germany, it's at its smallest part. And in the further east you go, the more it opens up. And so Russia, to defend its western border with the West, it wants to make that border as small as possible. So Russia has to expand westward in order to have a defensible border. The farther east it goes, the more land there is to defend, the more open, flat land that they have to defend. So this is why the Russian Empire expanded west. This is why the Soviet Union had the Warsaw Pact and its furthest westward point was in East Germany. In 91, when the Soviet Union collapses, all these countries become independent. Huge. That's why Putin says it's a geopolitical disaster, because now, Russia's at its smallest point. Its population is halved. It loses lots of resources and lots of land. In 97, NATO begins expanding, and it starts moving eastward towards Russia, which is like they're coming at Russia with like a dagger towards the throat of Moscow geographically. And so what happens is they keep moving eastward, and, obviously all the former Warsaw Pact countries go to NATO. And so Russia is very vulnerable. Russia is recovering from the collapse of the Soviet Union, and they're trying to piece back together the empire. But their bulwark is Belarus and Ukraine, right? Belarus is north and Ukraine is south there. And also there's Ukraine has the Crimea Peninsula, which that gives them control of the Black Sea. Russia also doesn't have year-round ports where they have access to the sea because their ports freeze. So this is one of their only year-round ports. It gives them access to the Eastern Med. So it's also important for that reason. So NATO's expanding eastward, but they have Belarus and Ukraine. They have Yanukovych, who's the leader of Ukraine until 2014. He's pro-Russian. He crushes NATO, EU membership for Ukraine. In 2014, there's a color revolution, and the American intelligence agencies overthrow Yanukovych in Kiev. They sponsor these protests like they did in many Eastern European countries. And they install Poroshenko, who's a pro-NATO, pro-EU leader. And this opens the door for Ukraine to join NATO and join the European Union. And what I've said is this is unacceptable for Russia, because Ukraine becoming part of NATO puts NATO's border right up against Russia's. It puts NATO 100 kilometers from Moscow, which is just an unacceptable posture. It strips Russia of its port at Sevastopol, strips them of the Black Sea fleet. They can't access the Black Sea. Like, this would be like if Russia invaded Mexico or Cuba or Canada, or like that's the equivalent threat, or Alaska or something like that to America. So Russia then in 2014 invades Crimea to secure their port. And by the way, Crimea is ethnically Russian, speak Russian, historically part of Russia. And they also sponsor the separatists in Donbass in eastern Ukraine. They do this because as long as there's a war going on, investment companies can't come in and invest in shale oil in Ukraine. And also Ukraine can't become part of NATO and EU, too unstable. So they're destabilizing Ukraine. And then finally, Putin makes these demands here in 22 and says, look, just promise that Ukraine will never become part of NATO, stop doing drills in Eastern Europe, and, stop expanding NATO, freeze NATO membership where it is. Like you're trying to destroy Russia. U.S. will not even come to the negotiating table. So Russia invades. I think that, like, all things considered, when you look at it with that longer view of history, NATO is the aggressor here. NATO will not allow Russia to have a reasonable security posture. They don't want world domination like we do. They want to defend their borders. They want to have a reasonable sphere of influence. And so I just think it's not statesman-like what we're doing. It's hubris. We're trying to keep control of the world like we had 30 years ago. But it's not 30 years ago. America's not as strong relatively in the world as it once was. And so we need to negotiate with China and Russia and India and Brazil a more multipolar world order, because that's the direction the world is going in. If we are going to try to defend every last inch of land that we thought we controlled after the Cold War ended, we're going to cause World War III, because we can't keep Taiwan and Ukraine and Afghanistan and everything in the world, like that American unipolar moment where we controlled everything was an anomaly, and it's passing. So I think that America's the aggressor. I think that America's caused this war. We're not being reasonable. We're not being statesmanlike. And I think that this special operation in Ukraine, it's dramatic. It was surprising. But I think it's reasonable. I don't think it's any more unreasonable than Israel invading the Golan Heights or occupying Palestine. It's not more unreasonable than America invading Iraq or anything like that. So that's why I'm pro-Russia. That's why I'm pro-Putin.
So quick question. So what was happening during 2016 and 2020 that, a lot of people will say, well, Trump would have never allowed this. So what was going on with Trump and the relationship that he had with Putin and Zelensky that sort of that conflict never really happened?
Well, I think that Trump was a negotiator. I think that Trump was a real statesman. And if you remember in 2016, he was saying, like, we should be friends with Russia. We should ally with Russia. Why are we fighting them? Which is a good question. And for the boomers, like, the Cold War is over. And that's meaningful that the Cold War is over, because the Soviet Union was a pariah state. They were trying to foment revolution, and they wanted a global workers' revolution. You look at the Communist International, it's a different country. Russia is now a normal country. Putin's a new czar. He's not the Communist Party leader. And so, Trump understands that. He sees Russia not as our, diehard enemy, but as a rival, a competitor, maybe an adversary would be a more modest way of putting it. And so and also Trump was tough. That's the thing too, is Trump was, I don't think, a neocon, but he knew how to use American power. He understood, and this stuff is it's pretty universal. Bluffing, negotiating from a position of strength. Like with North Korea, we had détente with North Korea because he was sailing 3 carrier strike groups in the Sea of Japan every week. Like, he was never going to nuke North Korea, but he knew that's part of the game. That's part of brinksmanship. That's how America negotiates. Biden's a retard, so he doesn't get any of that.
Is there criticism of Trump sending arms to Ukraine at all?
Sort of, because here's the thing. Some people say, like, America just needs to bring everybody home. You can't, because the thing is, like, these other countries will take as much as they can. So there's a way where you can reasonably sort of not retreat, but like I said earlier, negotiate a different world order. But like I said, it has to be done from a position of strength. So we can't just say Russia can have Ukraine. We got to give Ukraine arms. We got to do these things. And then from a position of strength say, well, here's what we could do for you. But that's solved at the negotiating table without war.
Right. Exactly. Here's a question on something that you said. When you said Eastern Ukraine, culturally Russian, ethnically Russian, right? I was speaking. It was weird. I DM'd a very well-known director. I'll just say Cary Fukunaga, who directed the last James Bond movie, and he said something about. I'll paraphrase it. I don't want to grab my phone and look at it, but he said something about when you support something like supporting any sort of Russian movement, criminalizing. I can't remember what he said, but I basically said if you support Russia, or if you support any measure against the Ukraine, it's a criminal action or something like that. And I asked him, I said, well, hold on a second, because Eastern Ukraine is very culturally Russian, ethnically Russian. They never wanted to be part of, NATO or the EU in 2014. Like they voted on this. And he said the word culturally Russian is propaganda. And I said, well, if it's fact, how is that propaganda? And I was like, I want to save that question for Nick. Like, why do you think someone would say something like? Because it seems like that's propaganda, saying that culturally Russian is propaganda.
It is. That is It's the same reason why they're calling it Kyiv now instead of Kiev.
Kiev. Oh.
What's going on with that? I thought it was always Kiev.
It always was Kiev, but now they're saying, well, the Ukrainian pronunciation is Kyiv. The Ukrainian spelling is Kyiv. And it's all about propping up this idea of Ukrainian statehood. Ukraine has a right to exist. It has national sovereignty. It has a national identity. And it's far more complicated than this. And that's why people might say, oh, it's propaganda to say it's culturally Russian. Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire for hundreds of years. Ukraine was
9th century.
Yeah, part of the Soviet Union. But now they want to say, well, Ukraine is its own thing. It's its own state. So that's why they would say, oh, the idea that it's Russian in character, and this is where you get to, this is all State Department propaganda, all of it. These Zelensky, the Ukrainian lapel pins, calling it Kyiv.
Wait a minute. Nick is wearing a blue sweatshirt with yellow lettering. Are you sure you're not a CIA operative who's been, switched on?
It's true. Yeah, it's true. He said my trigger word. Now I'm full Ukraine.
I just noticed it while he was talking. I'm like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, no, I noticed that the other day. I was so pissed. Now we're going to, I'm like, now I look like some State Department shill. We're going to go back and make some Russian merch, okay? That's going to be the next line.
Is that a big accusation? Do a lot of people accuse you or ever wonder if you are an asset?
Yeah, people do all the time.
Really?
Yeah, they call me a Fed, which, I mean...
It's logical. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying I wouldn't be surprised if you turn out to be a Fed, but it is like, why not? You have someone create a whole movement. America first. It gets a lot of people riled up. They get the whole January 6th thing. But it's clearly not. When you have a guy who, what was it, Baked Alaska was saying, this guy's a Fed, when he's like, we have to go into the Capitol. You're like, okay, that's just outright and blatant. I don't know. Nick could be a little subtle here.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, people have said that about me, but I mean, I get it. Because here's the thing. There are Feds in this space. There are people that are, like, I think there's some pretty prominent people that are Feds.
Well, like who?
Like Jack Posobiec. I think he's a total spy. 100%.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard this before.
Yeah. Jack, will you come on the show and defend your honor? I mean, I don't know Jack personally. I follow him. This is interesting. Say more.
Well, he's just one example, but he was like in naval intelligence.
Right.
And here's the other thing. He goes around on Twitter saying 1488 and all this kind of stuff that you're not supposed to say. And then curiously that disappeared.
Right.
And now he's cool. And he had his honeymoon in Israel or his wedding in Israel or something like that. Wow.
Really?
Well,
a lot of people wonder who there are some very big conservative voices out there who say very controversial things. And if someone like Nick or someone like John or Kai were to say the same exact thing, they'd be taken off. But the bigger voices wouldn't. So you wonder if they're not even, to use the conspiracy theory, controlled or whatever, but if they're somewhat backed either by big think tanks who have relationship with, government agencies or even NGOs or stuff like that. It's very interesting.
Who else is a Fed?
Well, so many people are compromised. I'll give you an example. Like Steve Bannon hates me. Steve Bannon is naval intelligence. Then he worked for Goldman Sachs. Then he worked in Hollywood. And he's a guy that's a conduit for Mercer family money. That's how he got in Breitbart, and that's how he got on the Trump campaign. And he goes out and backs, all these different people like Joe Kent. Joe Kent's another one who condemned me the other day.
That's what we wanted to talk to you about
that.
Yeah.
CIA agent, are there any former CIA agents? Do you just leave the CIA? Do you just leave the FBI? I don't think so. I don't think you do.
Well, former Green Beret, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was he working? Was he a CIA agent or was he a contractor?
He was contracted by the CIA, but he was in special forces.
Right.
And if you look into what they do, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. So And that's the thing is, and this is a broader point. People look at these like pundits and people, and they just kind of take it at face value. They take it for granted, but people are put in front of you for a reason. How do people get in front of you? You peel back the layers and you will find very quickly, you will find foreign countries and their money. You will find intelligence agencies. You will find think tanks, billionaires. You'll find a big network. And you don't have to go very far. I'm not like a QAnon believer or anything, but like the Q people had it right where they suspected everything and they saw these connections and they were following the money. And like, I don't believe like that Trump is running the country and they're executing politicians at Guantanamo. Like that's nonsense. But when people are following the trail, that's very real. And so you look at like Kent, and I put this on my Telegram the other day. Kent, CIA agent, former contractor, former Obama voter, and he's getting his money from Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's also backing J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is a Yale lawyer. A lot of bad things come out of Yale. American Enterprise Institute, which is all neocons, CNN, and he was also, I think, he's also a veteran. Peter Thiel, very involved in artificial intelligence, Clearview AI. It's like, so you just start to peel back the layers. You find a lot of really like interesting connections. And I think what people like about me is I'm literally just some jerk from Chicago. I started doing this when I was 18. People know my whole story. People find my high school yearbook. Like I'm kind of an open book. Everybody knows where I come from. At least they know that. These other people, it's like, what the hell were you doing at the CIA, Joe? What were you doing at Yale, JD?
I don't think billionaires pour tons of money into people who end up on no-fly lists, right?
No, I don't think so.
Quick question. Are you happy with your life and in a positive state of mind?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, I just want to get that on video before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not suicidal. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I love life.
I'm being serious.
No, I know. Yeah. Oh,
same.
Wait, same. Like, where's my camera? Joe Kent. Let's talk a little about Joe Kent, because I know that you were saying a few things on Telegram. Admittedly, I don't really know anything about the guy. I just saw on Twitter a lot of conservatives were loving him and sharing his video. I feel like he came out of nowhere. I don't know anything about him.
I saw some attack video from someone who was running against him.
Oh, did
you?
And
that's where I heard about him.
Yeah.
I think a woman who was running against him put some attack video.
I think
on
I
him.
saw him because Cernovich shared his video or something. But then, did Joe Kent say something about you? Okay, so walk us through this.
Yeah, he disavowed me after AFKAP, and it was, this was a bunch of crap. Can I swear on this show, by the way?
Yes,
okay, yes. I'm trying to be polite here, but...
No. Mike swears, like a sailor,
Sweet.
So please do.
Yeah, it's you don't have to if you don't want to, but the invitation is there.
Yes. Awesome, yeah. Well, I was going to say, it's just like, this is a load of shit, okay? Because this guy, like, I talked to this guy a year ago, okay, on the phone... And because I'm trying to help America First candidates get elected. So I'm asking my friends who worked in the Trump admin, my friends that are in the know, I'm saying, who are we looking at? Who's good in 22? Who should we back? And Joe Kent was everybody's favorite. That's who everybody wanted to win. Everybody said he's the best. And so I called him a year ago when he didn't have a lot going on. I think it was before he got Thiel money and everything. And his only employee was Brainerd. He brought Brainerd on as a consultant, and that was the first guy I brought on the campaign. Brainerd was at AFKAP too. I know Brainerd. He's friends with Michelle. I thought we liked him. So I call up Joe Kent and I said, hey, we want to help you. We want to boost your social media. We want to give you money. We want to give you volunteers. We want you to win and be America First. All we ask in return is you don't disavow us. If you're asked about me, that you don't disavow. We're America First. We're with you. And he said, yeah, that's great, whatever. He even supported me when I got put on the no-fly list. He put out a tweet about me. And then after AFKAP, a week after AFKAP, after the news cycle dies down, because everybody went crazy about it, but the news doesn't last very long. It lasts 48 hours, or a week. He wasn't there. He didn't speak there. Nobody knew that we invited him, so he has no connection to it, and yet he goes out of his way. And the point I'm trying to make is he went out of his way to disavow. Like, nobody was asking him. The question was never asked. He wasn't there, no connection to it, and the media buzz basically died down. But yet he goes out of his way a week later to say, I condemn Nick Fuentes' views. We don't focus on race and religion, and I condemn his views about Israel and this and that. And I said, that's really disappointing because, you're attacking me for no reason. And I'm America first. Like, why would you throw me under the bus to save yourself? Specifically about Israel, like that basically shows what your core convictions are. And then he comes back at me and makes it much worse and says, well, your views aren't consistent with my message of inclusive populism.
That's what someone wanted to ask. They say, can populism be inclusive?
Inclusive populism.
Yeah, that's his message.
What the hell?
I don't know what that means. Those are just two buzzwords thrown together that sound nice, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bunch of bullshit. And I put
Sounds like it.
Inclusivity, if you're using that word, conservatives should know better.
It's so gay.
Yeah,
that word is so gay.
I know. But I'm glad that he said it because he is part of this faction which is trying to shove all this bullshit down our throats. They're not right-wing. They're not Christian. They're not like Trump. They're trying to hijack Trumpism. And I don't want to name all the names, but there is this faction. If you go on their Twitter, they all retweet each other. They all go on each other's shows. Jack Murphy was a part of it. They're all sort of tied up with Claremont.
That whole thing was weird. Jack Murphy.
Yeah, and there's a lot more. That's the tip of the iceberg in D.C. on that kind of stuff, believe me.
Okay.
Wait, who's Jack Murphy again? Is that the one that looks like Tom Segura that blasted Sydney or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then all the butt porn came out.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
And why do all these people turn out this way? Like Dan Crenshaw is someone that comes to mind. I mean, what is it? Just money?
Yeah, they're not who they say they are. I mean, like I said, they're trying to cram this bullshit down our throat. These people that are not like us. What Americans want, it's pretty clear when they elected Trump. Trump got up there and he didn't say, hi, we're going to bring the workers of the world unite. Black, Hispanic, and white workers for populism. Let's unionize DoorDash. Trump went up there and said, they're bringing drugs, crime, they're rapists. He said, I'm calling for a shutdown of Muslims coming into America. We're going to say Merry Christmas. He was this close to saying the N-word. That's what Americans want. That's what this guy talks like us. He's our hero. He said, I'm your voice.
Yes.
Law and order. And then these guys come up and they're like, no. That simply won't do. That's divisive. That's inappropriate. We're about inclusive. We get this Bannon guy. Who'd ever even heard of Bannon? But now Bannon's going to lecture us about we're going to have these you-know-whats voting Republican for the next 100 years with our Platinum Plan and our First Step Act and all this pandering. So, no, I reject Joe Kent and his inclusive populism and Bannon and Jack Murphy and all this stuff. We want Trumpism. We want nationalism. We want Christianity.
I think we want division. I don't know why we should be scared to say that. I always think it's ludicrous that conservatives are afraid to say that, but we want more division. We should want that. That's something that we actually should aim for. I think there's good in that. And so just that word, inclusivity, it really rubs me the wrong way.
I just don't understand what they mean by division when Trump got more than 80 million votes. How is that division? That seems like a pretty large number.
No, but I mean just the idea of division.
No. I understand that. It's just weird when they say we don't want division. It's
Speaking of Trump, you've said before that Trump just got it started. Really. And I appreciate that because there's a lot of things about Trump that, we're critical of, but I don't know if there's anybody better at the moment, but say a little bit more about what you mean by Trump just got us started, but we need to keep it going. We need to go further.
Yes. We have to, because we're revolutionaries in a sense. We're not like overthrow the government with violence or anything, but in the sense that we are the antithesis of the system. And so I see myself as the vanguard of the revolution. America First is the protector and the guarantor of the revolution, which means to say that Trump comes in 2015 and he challenges the whole system, not just the Democrats and Biden, but the Republicans and the military-industrial complex and the media and the whole thing, and says we need to take America and literally make it great again. That's what he said, and that implies action. We're going to seize America and make it the way we want it to be. And since Trump got into office, there has been this concerted effort to dilute and hijack that movement and take all of his supporters and return them back into the system, get them to buy back into business as usual, politics as usual. And so the question I always ask is, who is going to conquer who? Is Trumpism going to conquer the system, or will the system conquer Trumpism? So that's why I always say, if people tell me it's too controversial, it's too extreme, I say good. That's my job. Because I need to demand more. If the right is moving further to the right, I need to be moving further to the right. I need to challenge them to go further, because there's always a pressure from the money, from the lobbyists, from the foreign countries to bring us back into the matrix, bring us back into the fold. Vote for Ron DeSantis. He's not as aggressive as Trump. He's going to win the middle-aged women. He's going to win the suburban moms. He's going to sign the anti-BDS bill in Israel. He's not divisive like Trump. Vote in the Georgia Senate runoff. Give Mitch McConnell the majority. Hold the line. Like inclusive populism. And who's the one in Virginia who just
the new
won?
governor?
Yeah, the new, what's his name? Youngkin, Greg
yes,
Youngkin.
Yeah. Glenn Youngkin or something like that.
Vote for Youngkin. Vote for, and who are these other guys, the anti-CRT? This Lindsay guy, and who's the other one?
James Lindsay?
Yeah, James Lindsay, and the other one that popularized. We're against CRT because it's, it tells black people that they can't be great. It's like, no, it's because it's anti-white.
Yeah.
It's because they're bullying white people.
Right.
So the point is, like, we have got to take Trumpism and strap a booster rocket to it and take it all the way. We need to replace everybody in the government. We need to replace the system with something different, not just get, this diluted, watered down establishment stuff with like a Trumpian visage, Trumpian visage.
So really quick, you said something. So I've heard you say previously, might have been on Elijah's show, the very popular conservative idea of smaller government. We need a smaller government. We need to shrink the government. You said something, and I was guilty of that as well in the past, of thinking, well, we just need a smaller government that's not going to infringe upon our rights. But you said something I thought was very compelling, is that it doesn't matter what the size of the government is. What matters is that we have competent leaders. So Speak a little bit more about why small government should not be our goal, per se.
Yeah, it's just that, it just doesn't matter. It denies the context of the situation we're in. We're in like a war right now between two clear factions. It's like a cold political war. They're trying to destroy our way of life and kill us. And we're talking about like, well, we need to shrink the government. It's like, no, we need to use the government. We need to use the government and not be shy about it, because this is the biggest government ever. And when Republicans get in office, they never shrink the government. Let's be honest. They never do that. And even when they do, like Reagan's a small government. The only way that Reagan shrunk government spending is if you don't include the military and you don't include mandatory spending. So they'll say, well, Reagan shrunk non-defense discretionary spending. It's like, if you have to qualify it by that much, it's bullshit. He didn't shrink the government. He made it bigger than ever. And they make it bigger and this is what it does. Republicans and Democrats, it's a tit for tat. They make it bigger for their sponsors, bigger for their backers, regulatory capture for the people that paid for their campaign. And so that's just the game. The government just needs to do its job.
Right.
So the government should do a lot of things, in my opinion. The government should transform America. The government should do things that makes it easier for people to have families.
Yes.
They should make it harder for people to consume porn. Yes. They should make it easier for people to get fit and stay healthy. Yes. And that's what the government should do.
Yeah, I think it should have, and this is a turn that I have recently taken. I used to think, well, the government is simply there to protect and preserve our rights, and that's it. But the more that the days go on, I believe so much more in that, is that the government should have a positive influence on the people, and that we should have competent people in office who can actually shape and shift the way that our culture is going.
Yeah, and it has to. Who else would do it? It's the most powerful institution in the world. And, we're in this institutional war. So the government can overcome big tech, and the government can overcome all these things. Let's use government as a tool in this political struggle is the message, I
wonder if, the Federalists and James Madison believed in a powerful central government, but I don't think they ever imagined that it would become so bloated and become so corrupt. They did account for a little bit of corruption, but I'm wondering what they would think if they saw what was happening now. I'm wondering, are you in favor of like something like term limits? Congressmen, senators, 2 years, you're out. Do as good a job as you can. You don't have to worry about re-election.
He's like, it depends on who it is.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as something I guess a little bit more. William F. Buckley always talked about 6-year presidential, like one term, 6 years. You don't have to worry about re-election. You don't have to worry about trying to raise money. You have 6 years to do a job. Do it.
Yeah, I think you could mess around with the system. The biggest thing though is the money in politics,
right,
because you could do term limits and you could do that. But ultimately you're just sort of rearranging things. What really has to go is the influence of the big money, which is a real problem. It's just, when you think about it this way, the government, very simply, this is just basic math. The government raises $4 or $5 trillion in tax revenue, and the House has the power of the purse. How much does a congressional race cost? Not very much. You can elect like all of Congress and the president for less money, significantly less money than the government has the ability to spend and mint through the Federal Reserve. So it's just basic arithmetic. The Trump campaign raised $1 billion. Mm-hmm. He's got influence over the legislative process, which commands $4 trillion, which is 4,000 times greater than $1 billion, which was all the money that he raised. And that's just like to give you an idea of the scope and the scale of the government's power. And that's what they do. So they set up shop, foreign governments, big companies set up shop there, and then they just rape the government.
You say, okay, I find this really fascinating. You say you don't read as much anymore. How do you ingest and how do you digest all of this information? I mean, are you like what sources of knowledge do you acquire?
Well, I read the news these days. I cover the news every day. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is just my own. I think about this stuff a lot. I don't sit down and like read books as much as I used to, but I'm always reading about what's going on and thinking about what's going on. So that's really where I get it.
Here's a couple of questions for you from Instagram. Why do you think there's such a huge misconception and demonization regarding edgelord comedy? And have you thought about suing the living hell out of those who paint groypers and yourself in a blatantly defamatory way?
The problem is you can't sue because defamation is so weak for public figures. Yeah. It's like the standard is so impossible. And then you got to prove damages, which is then another challenge. So you'd spend all this money, prove they lied, and then hey, good job. You don't get any money for it.
The Sandman kid, like they were saying, like, oh, everybody's settling with him, but it turns out it's probably not as much money as everybody's thinking it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Like Nick Sandman and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's a private person. So if you're not
right, I see what you're saying.
So he could win money, but when you're public, it's malicious. You have to prove malice is the standard. Yeah. But as far as edgelord, you know what it is, and this is why I love what I do, because people go, shouldn't you? My mom's always like, you got to stop saying the N-word on your show. You got to stop making these jokes. Yeah, she texted me during my show. I'm like, Ma, quit texting me during my show.
It's nice that she watches your show.
Yeah, she watches every night, so it's wholesome.
Sweet.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, we live in this gay country where, like, because of capitalism and democracy, it's like an advertisement society. So everything's about focus group. Everything's about, winning over demographics. So everything's sanitized. All advertisements, all content, politics, it's all sanitized for a mass appeal to a mass audience, lowest common denominator. And that's why people don't want to do edgelord stuff because, you're not going to be as successful as somebody that's super, super nice and clean and polished. And people
Confetti.
go, right.
Yeah.
Why is everything so sanitized? It's because, you would get offended if somebody said the wrong thing. Well, I don't care. I'll offend everybody. I'll lose money because it's funny. And I care about funny, and I'll do it at any cost.
Which book of the Bible do you find most convincing / inspiring?
It's a good question. Well, I just stick with the Gospels, the four books of the Gospel. That's my favorite part probably because, some of it's a little bit tedious. You get into Numbers and you're like, what's going on here? Do I really need to read cubits and all this?
Yeah.
So I would say the Gospel's very inspiring. Because it's Jesus. That's our bread and butter, right? I'm
in Matthew right now.
Yeah.
And Matthew seems like, okay, so, I mean, this is coming after like 20 years of, being out of college and being out of high school where we're taught this kind of stuff. But Matthew seems very abridged. I mean, so far is what I'm thinking. Because when I think of the Bible, I'm thinking of a lot of history regarding, Jesus's, late adolescence and teenage years. And it kind of goes from he's born and then... they go to Egypt and then they say, okay, you're ready to come back. And then all of a sudden he's like a 20-year-old.
Right.
So I'm like, which book of the Gospels is probably the one that you find not the most appealing, but the most interesting?
Yeah, I would say I also like the wisdom books, Proverbs, because it shits on women a lot. Whenever people are like, hey, you can't say that about women, I'm like, go to Proverbs. Go to Proverbs. Hey, go to Genesis, page 1. Hello? Page 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, the New Testament's very short compared to the Old Testament. It's like, what the heck?
Wait, now that he brought up women, I want to ask. There's a lot of things you say about women that strangely I agree with. And so I know a lot of the criticism is like, you talk about, one of the things you say that's really funny, you talk about being married and you're like, what is the only alone time I get is going to be when I'm in the bathroom, in the shower, or in the car. And he like thinks it's ludicrous, the idea of like sharing a bed and sharing a room with a woman a lot, because you talk about how like a woman is the last person you want to hang out with. I totally understand your thoughts about women, because when we look at society today, and I come at it from obviously a different point of view because I'm a woman, it actually makes me kind of sad that I see women have really in many ways destroyed our culture and our society. And the typical millennial or Gen Z woman that you see today, she's horrible. And I totally get why there are a lot of young men who in a sense can't stand women and don't want to be around women, because the women that we see now today are just, I don't want to be around them either. And so I know the retort to that is a lot of like, oh, well, there's a problem with the feminization of men and men not being masculine enough. But I don't see men on a mass scale promoting nonsense in the same way that women do. So for example, women and this whole idea of body positivity. I don't know if you know Lizzo, this obese whale of a singer. She was just on the cover of People and she did this whole video.
Well, she's a black singer, so Nick would obviously know
that's right.
Yeah,
of course.
big fan. Yeah.
Right.
He would know her. And she did this whole video about how I have a really hot body. I'm a body icon. First of all, if you have a really hot body, you don't have to say it. It's like a guy who's alpha doesn't have to say I'm an alpha male. But you see this mass acceptance by women of idiotic things like body positivity. You don't see men accepting things on a mass scale like that. You don't see men saying things like the future is male, we are the superior gender. You don't see that on a mass scale the way that you do with women, even though Nick's like, well, we are. But do you know what I mean? Like, you don't see men, it's just not the same. And so I totally get what you mean, that women today are just insufferable. And I'm not saying that to be controversial or people say you're the pick me girl. I don't care what people say, because it's a very real issue that I see happening in America today. And I try my best to try to lead young women the right way and tell them the best thing that you can do for yourself is to get married in your early 20s and have children. Because one thing, I wish I had children much earlier in life, because I truly believe, I'm not kidding when I say this, I think becoming a mother makes you a much better person. It makes you a better woman. It makes you a better person by every measurable category in the world. And so AOC once made a joke about having kids, and a lot of conservatives were like, oh, she can't have kids. I think it'd be a good thing for AOC to have kids. I think it'd be good. She would probably change a lot of her positions on things and become a better person, because becoming a mother is literally doing the thing that we are put on this earth to do.
But a mother in the correct sense of the word. If she wanted to be a good mother, be considered a good mother, she couldn't be involved in politics anymore.
Well, that's true. And that's true, because I think that women should leave the workforce to have more kids. That's another discussion, though. But I get what you say a lot about women, because I see this myself, and it just... I'm concerned and I'm worried about the future that we're going to have, because of course, if you have all these women who are incredibly self-obsessed, they're so obsessed with themselves and they hate men so much. I mean, what is the future going to be for the younger generation? Because I think about these women becoming mothers. So yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of the jokes you make about women aren't actually jokes, but a lot of what you say, I can really understand, which is, I know, not what you're probably used to hearing from women.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. It's and the thing is, I do make a lot of jokes, but I'm just extremely traditional. My view on women is based on the Bible, and it's just based on common sense. Because you hear a lot of conservatives say this. They'll say, "Well, I believe there are two genders," and it's like, okay, that's easy enough to say, but if there are two, that means they're distinct. That means they're meaningfully different. And things that are meaningfully different, well, that means they're different. That means that men are not women and women are not men. Well, what does that mean? It means that women were designed to make babies. That's what, like you said, that's what they were put here to do. That's their job. not to be president, not to be, Mr. Boss or whatever. They're here to have kids. That's what they're made for. I couldn't do the things that women do. I can't make a kid come out of my butt. I can't, not they come out of a butt, but I can't sit around with a kid and do the mom type things in the same way that women can't go and fight in a war or become the president or go and work in construction or do boring things, autism type things. So I take it all the way though too and say the relationships between men and women are different too. There's a complementarity between man and woman that's physical, but it's also emotional, temperamental. That's why they're married. But men and women are not like pals. They're not friends.
I love when you say that because I think it's so stupid.
I hate
when
the
people
term,
are like,
my best friend.
Marry your best friend. I'm
yeah.
like, my husband is not my best friend. My husband is not my friend. He is my husband. Mm-hmm. And I don't treat him like a friend. I don't talk to him the same way that I talk to my girlfriends. I think that's actually incredibly disrespectful.
If my wife talked to me like a friend, I'd be like, you're a horrible friend. Jesus.
I think it's incredibly disrespectful to the husband for a woman to go, my husband's my best friend. I love hanging with him. I just think it's so bizarre. And so I actually really like it when you say it's so dumb to tell people that you should marry your best friend or to even think of your spouse as your best friend.
Yeah, because men and women are different, and men's best friend are other men because men have things in common and men are similar like that. And a woman will be a man's wife, your wife, not your friend. And it's you become one flesh and you become family, and it's just different. And I also say that there's this big problem with men too, with this simping thing that's going on, where I don't know.
Go into that. I love the word.
Yeah, I hate simps. I probably hate simps more than I hate like e-girls and all that kind of stuff because, these e-girls, man, they're trouble. But it's these simps that oftentimes I'm fighting against men where they're so corrupted by lust that they compromise their reason. Because I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying we should be cruel towards women. I never say that. I try not to be cruel or vindictive or mean. You don't see me going out of my way to attack women like some people do. But I just talk about women's role in society and women's true nature and their true disposition. Yeah. But you've got these men out there who they will not agree with that because like they have a girlfriend or they want a girlfriend. So they're going to say, we have to be really respectful and nice to women and we got to put her on a pedestal and all this kind of stuff. And it's just so toxic and corrosive because men have to lead. Men have to lead the household. Men have to lead the country. And you can't do that if you're afraid of offending your girlfriend or women or whatever. You got to be a man, and this I don't want to be too vulgar because I don't like to be vulgar in front of women. I'm a polite person.
See, he respects women, people.
I do. It's just, again, old-fashioned, but this female worship, it just has to stop. We worship God. Men should want excellence. They should want camaraderie. They should want to stand up for noble things. They should want the admiration of their elders and their peers. And yes, they can have a wife, but this I just want a girlfriend at any cost. I just want a girl to pat me on the head and be my new mom. I see that so much and it makes me furious.
Yeah, and then another thing that women, I don't know why women get so mad when people simply tell them what their true nature is. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I think women on a mass scale are guilty of more than men are on a mass scale. Women hate hearing the fact that we are more emotional, we are more compassionate, we are more neurotic, and all these qualities that I think it's why do women take that so badly? Why is it a bad thing to be those things?
They just don't like hearing existential truth. That's the problem.
And that's the thing to me is that we should be proud of those qualities because that's what makes us excellent nurturers and excellent mothers. The fact that we are less rational because when you're dealing with an infant, you cannot be rational. You have to have a sort of sixth sense with emotions and understand what cry is that. My poor husband, God bless him, he could not tell my daughter's cries apart from one another. And I know exactly what cry is hungry, what face is hungry, what cry means she's tired, what cry means she has a wet diaper. And these are not rational things. So I don't know why women get so upset or offended when people are simply repeating to them what their true nature is. And their true nature is a wonderful thing. Like, it's a great thing that we're less rational, more emotional, because it makes us fantastic mothers.
They've just been corrupted by media is probably the simplest way to put it. They've just been corrupted and they've been sold a lie, because I've spoken to multiple women who have accepted the lie and have said, I am so much happier being a mom, being a wife. I was blatantly lied to. Now that I look back upon my life in corporate America or whatever it was in media. And I mean, am I simping for my wife by saying like I absolutely respect her? Like, I wonder, because he said something about worshiping women, putting them on a pedestal. I've ruined relationships by doing that. And in hindsight, I could say, God, why would I ever do that? I'm almost to the point where I'm saying, I would tell my wife, I respect you more than I love you, if anything. Mm-hmm. Like, I have so much respect for her. And if this sounds like simping, then yeah, but she has realized this lie, and we've talked about this before, but she's realized the lie. She hasn't, I don't want to say accepted her role as a female, but she's embodied it so much. And it's so refreshing to see something like that. Yeah. Because like you're saying, like, men don't want to deal with kids. I love hanging out with my daughter, but I don't react, and it's not empathy, but I don't react in the same way that my wife does to my daughter. There's more of like this sort of like...
Even down to the facial expressions, even down to how women you look at a baby and it's so important for them to have the facial expressions. You go like this and you make the funny faces. Men just aren't able to, even from a young age. Male babies, they smile less than female babies do, even from infancy.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. Boy babies have fewer facial expressions than women do, because we are just naturally more expressive, and that it's meant to be for when we are with children. You have to be much more expressive with kids, because they need to understand that communication. They have to develop that from a young age. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a combination of, it makes me angry and it makes me really sad when I see women just deny their true nature. And I don't know.
Well, I think like my wife, I think once they realize that it's just her, embracing the role of the mother has just kind of, awakened. It's almost like, the term red pill. I don't know if there's like a new pill for women who have just realized that being a mom is like what they were sort of made to do.
Oh, it's the best.
Can we create a pill for that?
I don't know. It's the best thing ever, but that's why I tell all women, start young, because it's just the best thing you can do. Are you anywhere close to getting married? How old are you?
I'm 23.
23. You're young.
Yeah.
So I almost didn't want to ask him anything about it. I always just thought it was like the low-hanging fruit that people would go for.
No, I'm just curious, because do you have a girlfriend?
No, I'm an incel.
You're
hardcore incel. So.
Do you want to get married anytime soon, or are you just good doing what you're doing right now? Because men are lucky. You guys can just wait until you're like 35, 40, whatever to get married.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing. It's never been my thing.
Yeah,
I'm one of these autists where I'm just in my work, and I'm in my deal. But I always figure, I'm always keeping my eyes open, keeping my options open, and it'll happen, when it's appropriate and good time.
You haven't been proposed to by any female roipers?
Yeah. People have, tried to talk to me, but
you're doing your thing.
Yeah, I just don't have time for that. I don't have time for the games.
Do you live by yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I live with my parents. But
okay.
Yeah,
all right. So you're doing your own thing.
That's actually very that's not selfish, because he's like, I've got a lot of work going on. I don't want to have to devote any time to someone who would feel neglected.
And you're young. Yeah. But
yeah, 23. What's that like?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because, I feel like I'm getting old, I mean, when I was 18, I would do this and people go, oh my gosh, you're only 18. Now I'm 23 and nobody cares. Now people assume I'm 30.
I genuinely want to know what it's like being a 23-year-old right now. It's
epic. I just it's the usual, age anxiety. I just want to stay young. I feel like I'm getting older,
Do you think you'll live with your parents until you get married?
No, I'm probably going to move out soon, because I'm going to move to Florida.
Oh, you are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wait, I thought you just said you live by yourself.
No, I thought you were asking like if I live like a wife or something.
Gotcha.
My family, but yeah, I'll be moving out to Florida soon, and we'll see what happens there. But no, it's good. It's good being 23, and The good thing is I have a lot of time. That's what I like about being so young is I have lots, because some people are like, in their 30s and 40s and they're like, oh, I got to get married. Oh, I got to do this or that. I don't have the energy like I used to. But I look at like my enemies and I'm like, I'm going to be around for a long time. Like you're going to have to deal with me, hopefully for a long time.
Yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask really quick, do you have plans to run for office? I mean, what's in the future for you?
I don't have any immediate plans, but yeah, I might in the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody who is on, I guess, the left who would be like a left Nick Fuentes? I mean, I don't know, because you see there are plenty of personality on the right who are like-minded like Nick. But I don't see too many young, maybe just because I'm not open to it. I'm not thrust, the algorithms of these people in front of me. But is there anyone you're aware of that is kind of like you or of your ilk on the left?
No, nobody my age. Yeah, I don't really know anybody that's like same age, similar. Like the closest I could think of would be like somebody like a Hassan or a Destiny.
That's what I was thinking.
Because they're or Vosh, but he's older than me. They're all older than me, and Vosh is a pedophile, so that's a little bit different. Also, different speed, but he's fat. Also,
is it worth staying in a quote blue state or fighting, or better to flee?
And
fighting.
It depends, I guess. I think that's really up to people to make that decision based on their own values. Because if it were up to me, I would never leave Chicago because I just love Chicago so much. But there's no political opportunity in Chicago, so that's sort of unique to me. But I don't think it really matters too much in the grand scheme of things if people fight or flight. It's really just more a personal decision.
Yeah, I mean, in Washington, they just passed a magazine ban of more than 10 rounds. And Washington was pretty liberal as far as gun laws went, and there are a lot of there's one sort of, I mean, like not two-way but gun influencer who's living in Washington right now, and I asked him, I was like, is it time to move to Tennessee or Texas? What are you going to do? And that's the case of someone who says we're going to stay and fight this legislatively or something like that. So if you have the means to quote unquote fight, I guess you should. But
I get those questions all the time. People are like, should I leave California? I'm like, I don't know. It's like, why are you asking me? I don't like.
Do you not like that the gas prices are too high? Because I mean, it's kind of happening everywhere. Other than that, California seems nice.
It's also just a funny thing to ask some random person online, like because I got a couple followers, or like you're like, should I leave? Should I leave?
Should I upend my whole entire life?
I don't know. Like it's up to you.
It's like, I don't want that on me.
No, no, exactly.
I don't want that blood on my hands.
Yeah, and also now that we're here, I kind of don't want more people coming here.
Please,
I don't care what. I don't care who you are. What just stay where you are.
Tennessee sucks, by the way.
It's awful. Here. It's the worst. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
What else is on your mind, Nick? Is there anything on your mind, something that you haven't spoken about, or just anything you wish you'd be able to talk about more?
Anybody you want to bash publicly?
Anybody? Not really. I mean, the Joe Kent, that's my latest thing. So I'm going to go out to Washington State in April and do a rally because his primary is in late April. So whenever his last event is, I'm going to be there doing a competing rally at wherever it is next to him and put him on blast, and say, listen, we're not inclusive populist, gay-tard, okay?
Is he running Senate or Congress?
Congress.
Okay,
it's the 3rd district, I think, in Washington. So I want to elect somebody this year, and I want to not elect somebody. So I want to take Joe Kent out of the race, and I want to get somebody in.
Was there a not very big, but just any sort of presence regarding AFKAP protesters at all?
No.
It was relatively
nothing.
quiet?
Nothing. Yeah, there was like one journalist tried to get in. He immediately he didn't even get in. We clocked him at the.
What an evil dude! Like he can't even garner any sort of Antifa Black Bloc sort of protest. But a lot will get thrown out of Turning Point for asking Kyle Rittenhouse a question.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk hates you, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, there was one. What was the one clip that I saw? It was a Turning Point event, and I think I don't know if you were live streaming it, but you did a video on it where everyone in line to ask a question was an America First kid, and Nick was like, oh, I know this kid. This is going to be a horrible question for Charlie. Wow, what was that? I forget what it was. Yeah.
The Great Groyper War 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Are we talking about the same clip when the kid goes up and he asks, because Charlie's on stage with Rob Smith, and he asks, how does anal sex help us win this war here? And it was just, he was asking, he had to ask a question like 3 times and never answered it.
Well, no, Rob got very upset at the
Well,
question.
yeah. I think he said something like, "This is America," whatever. It was a non-answer. But
That's almost like a worse answer and
Yeah.
not a good case. Not a good case for your organization.
Yeah.
Like, no, they should allow anal rape. Yeah, why not? Jesus. Well, here's something off the top of my head, and I mean, you talked about this earlier when you talked about what you were doing with your show and what you're doing with America First. Do you feel that the ongoing corruption of conservatism, whether it's, and I don't want to specifically target Turning Point, but just, a lot of these Blaze shows, Turning Point, Daily Wire, where I don't know if they're just really trying to appeal to Zoomers and make things neon and bright and cool and like, look at this pretty young girl. She's not really saying anything important, but I mean, that's obviously a net negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, I do think so because, and here's why. It would be one thing if it was like productive, but these things are just like a giant, they suck all the money out of the room and they suck all the attention out of the room. And to do what exactly? They weren't there for Stop the Steal. That would have been a great purpose for Turning Point USA. It would have all been worth it if we had a national organization that could deploy people at a moment's notice to save the election in 2020. But they didn't do that.
Yeah.
They were there in Georgia, though, for the Senate runoff. And, all of that would have been great if they could turn out for America First candidates. But they don't do that. So it is a big net negative, and it's all a big compromise, because Charlie Kirk, he's changed his tune a little bit lately. He can say whatever he wants, but his organization peddles the same crap, and it's not changing anything. And a lot of people say, oh, well, it's incremental. You got to be patient. We got to make compromises. I am very skeptical of that approach because we have heard that forever. And it's always this like, they always say that to us. It's bait. It's always just out of reach. Well, next year, just later on, just something in the future. How about we just finally have a real victory? We just say what we mean and we just get what we want. Instead, it's always, we got to wait for that. Oh, that's too controversial, whatever. It's like, no, things are horrible. This country sucks now, like straight up. I say it's America first, it's America worst. This country sucks now, Like everything about this country these days, it's gross. It's dirty. There's homeless people everywhere. Everybody's fat. Everything. The SNL isn't even funny. The movies suck. Everything this country produces just sucks. And I'm just sick of it. I want to go in there and just say, hey, let's just start over here. Let's just get new people in. And everybody's like, no, we got to play the game. Keep the charade up. I'm done playing games.
Do you want Trump to run again in 2024? And if not, if there's an ideal candidate out there somewhere, who would it be?
Trump. It would be Trump because, and I don't like that he's pro-vax and it's just not what it used to be, but he's the only one as far as I'm concerned. Everybody else is part of the system. Like DeSantis, everybody wants DeSantis and that's probably who it'll be if it's not Trump. He's a GOP party guy, and a lot of red flags with DeSantis. Like the first thing he did when he got elected was fly to Israel himself and sign that anti-BDS bill for college campuses in Florida. Also, the people that he's going to bring in to staff the White House are going to suck. And it's like, I look at people supporting DeSantis and I think, we tried to elect somebody that was captured by the Israel lobby with a shitty staff. Like we did that already. That was the last 5 years or 4 years. Let's at least give Trump a chance here because there's some positives. The Israel lobby that captured his administration is sort of faded away in a sense. Sheldon Adelson is dead. Netanyahu's not in power. Kushner's not in the inner circle anymore. That triad is no longer in effect. And also, if he gets in office, who's going to be the chief of staff? I'm told somebody very based. The chief of staff, or rather the head of personnel in 2020 was very good. John McEntee. They're writing hit pieces about him in Atlantic and in Axios, I think. But he was excellent in the last year of the administration. So if we get Trump in 24 with no Adelson, no Netanyahu, no Kushner, and we get McEntee from the beginning, that sounds to me like a great administration. That sounds to me like an administration that learned its lesson from the past 4 years. DeSantis is just, you might as well just put Rubio in there. You might as well put Ted Cruz in there. So Trump is the only one who's not part of the system, and he's the only one where there's a non-zero chance that something truly radical could happen.
What are people doing with Tulsi Gabbard? Because I'm hearing that a lot, and I've even said, if anything, I think if DeSantis did run, he'd probably like tap someone like Tulsi, just because she's doing something very weird where she is talking like conservative, kind of, but then I mean I could see through it. And I could say there's something amiss here. I don't know what it is. What do you think she's doing?
I think it's all very suspicious because She gave Sheldon Adelson's wife a big fat hug a few years ago. She's like this with the Adelsons. And she's on the Council on Foreign Relations. Yeah. And she's part of the World Economic Forum too. So I don't know that anybody good comes from any of that. And also, she's pro-abortion. She's like a liberal,
right.
But she's one of these like, it's this fantasy of this red-brown alliance that people, red shirts and brown shirts, the commies and the Nazi, the fascists. Yeah. It's never going to happen, I don't think, because it's not the 30s, man. It's like we've got two distinct sides, the red side and the blue side. There's more to it than GOP and Democrat. It's like there's two distinct factions here, and we got to be the red faction, not try and appease the other side,
Yeah. Oh, interesting. What do you think, Gina?
I'm thinking are you friendly with Ann Coulter?
No, she doesn't like me.
She doesn't like you? But you like her.
I used to. Not anymore, because she attacked me.
It seems like a lot of like the old, like people like Ann Coulter, PJ O'Rourke, they became very like sanitized towards the late stages of their. I used to really like PJ O'Rourke, and he would have some, really good books. He had a book called Vacations in Hell that's really good, just talking about his experiences in other countries outside of America. But yeah, it's not surprising that Ann Coulter would.
What about Michelle Malkin? You guys are still cool, right?
Love Michelle. Yeah, mommy of the movement. Can you put us in touch?
Because we want to have her on the show.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, we love Michelle. She's amazing.
Asian women on the show. How would I?
Because she's like one of the few women that you respect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I respect women, all right? Few women.
You see how she tried to slip it in there?
Yeah. I respect all women. No, but she's brilliant, and I like her, and she's way better than Ann Coulter, way better. Because we thought Ann Coulter would come to our side, but Ann Coulter's a fag hag. She's got gay people all over her, and she's
unmarried and childless,
and she likes the black guys also. So maybe that's why she's always talking about giving reparations to black people. Probably because she likes black guys. She wants to date them.
Wait, I remember that big talks about reparations.
The big Well, she had a big outburst on a who's Jorge Ramos? What network is that?
Is that Univision?
Univision or something? Like there was like some sort of town hall where she got upset at Latin. Not even Latin. I don't even know if they were Latin American or if they were just Mexicans or whatever. And she says, "You guys are claiming to have this big civil rights sort of movement. You're nowhere even close to trying to piggyback off of black Americans. If anything, they're actually owed something. Like you guys are really owed nothing." I remember she had that big outburst. And
she did?
Yeah. I don't know if she was necessarily saying reparations, but the sentiment was that if anyone was deserving of it, it wasn't, Latin and Mexican
maybe
immigrants.
She's going through menopause or something? I don't know. It doesn't
she
sound
does.
She's way
she
past
supports
that,
reparations,
Yeah.
And she's all gayed up. She's friends with every gay dude in the conservative movement.
Is she?
How do you have feelings about someone like? Do you think it would be somewhat of a not noteworthy, but of an advantageous discussion with someone like Coleman Hughes? If you're familiar with him at all.
I don't know him.
Oh, okay. Coleman is, what would you call him?
He's an academic.
He's your age. I believe
is he?
He's pretty young. I think he's out of the Ivy League, but he was someone who went to Congress and testified anti-reparations. So he's a black American, and I forget who
he's anti-CRT.
He's anti-CRT, he's anti-reparations, but he was talking about, he was not gloating, but he was talking about, voting for Biden and talking about how some mandates make sense, and
he hates Trump, and he's very pro-immigration, pro-legal immigration.
Right.
Was he Republican or what?
No. Not even.
He's one of those guys that's like in limbo and like makes a whole thing.
The only reason why I would think it'd be interesting to talk to someone like that, just because if I'm just going to talk to no offense, but people like Nick all the time, I'm just like, okay, well, there's nothing really new I'm learning here, but I'd have fun.
I would like to have Coleman on the show. Yeah. But I'd like to see them talk.
Do you ever kind of say, you know what, maybe I'll get someone to talk to that is kind of no one that that watches me or that is in America First would expect me to talk to, or is it just not worth it kind of?
They don't usually nobody wants to talk to me unless they're on board, because they're like, I don't want to platform that Nazi, or I don't want to be associated.
Because you'll talk to anybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of get that sense that you'll go anywhere that you're invited. It's just that nobody invites you.
It's true. Yeah.
I honestly think a panel with Nick and someone like Killer Mike would be awesome.
I think it would be amazing. I really do. Yeah.
Or someone like, Cornel West and, Nick Fuentes would be kind of, and he would, I think Cornel West would talk to him.
So a lot of people criticize you for your age, which is weird. And they use your age.
It's so stupid.
It is. I find it to be, very silly. They say that you're so young and what do you know? And
knows more than most. I said it yesterday on the show. You can talk to a 16-year-old, and within 2 minutes, you can find out if he's intelligent or not.
Yeah.
Age really doesn't have anything to do with it. Am I going to bring a 9-year-old on the show? No, we'll leave that to Vosh. But I'm just saying, the whole he's too young.
Yeah, I mean, does it ever annoy you hearing that, or you're just like, whatever?
People don't really say that anymore. They used to. People just assume I'm older now. I always I'm 23, and people are like, what? You're 23? So,
but 23 is not young anymore. It's like when you were 19, that was young.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When I was 19, people were like, how old are you? 19. And now I'm like 23, and then I'll be 30, and then no one will care.
Nobody cares when you're 30.
Yeah, a couple hundred years ago, he's, late stages of life at this point.
Yeah, a couple hundred years ago, you would have had 4 kids by now.
True.
Something like that.
Oh, and a lot of land.
A lot of land.
Yeah, I was listening to, what was I listening to? I was watching... Who was talking about it? I can't remember. They were talking about how, I was reading this book. It's called The Lies of Socialism. I forget who wrote it, but it's in my car right now. And he was talking about how settlers, early pilgrims, what killed them was socialism, the forms of socialism, and what do they call the economy where it's just, people who come over here and it's just very an agricultural economy, a capitalistic agricultural economy. So what killed these early settlers, we're all just trying to work and trying to raise enough grain for all of us. And a lot of the early settlers found that this was killing them. They weren't being ravaged by Indians or anything like that, or dying of disease. They were dying of hunger. And it was just very interesting to read about what happened was this sort of agricultural capitalism that was just like, all right, we're going to give people plots of land and they have to raise their own food. They have to grow their own crops, because if they don't, they're going to die. And that turned out, I don't know why am I saying this?
Yeah, how did we get there?
I don't know why I went off on that, but it was interesting.
So are you sad to leave Chicago?
Yeah, I am. I love Chicago.
You do. You love it, huh? 5 generations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I don't think I've really spent any time in Chicago. Do they have good food? What's the best food?
The best. We have the best food easily.
He's going to talk about pizza.
I know. Oh, yeah. Well, pizza. You're talking to a New Yorker
hot dogs. That's where you want to go for the hot dogs.
We have the best hot dogs in the world, and it's not even just the deep dish. Everybody thinks deep dish. That's really
got the thin crust too, right?
That's right. We have a cut in squares, tavern style thin crust pizza. That's that's what we really eat.
That's what I would go to.
That's our
what I would
dirty
have
little
secret.
Really? Yeah, that's our dirty, nasty little.
Have you ever been to the hot dog stand where they make fun of you?
Yeah, that place sucks. Wiener Circle.
Is that what it is?
You know what you do? I don't know if it's a Chicago thing, but if you give them the certain code word, the black woman will take her shirt off and shake her boobs at you. That's
really,
and it's just gross, degenerate shit. And they support Ukraine on their on their marquee. They said something like, "We support Ukraine." So I'm never going to Wiener Circle.
What does Ukraine have to do with wieners?
Thank you. exactly.
I mean, they probably don't. That's Germany. But what is with this blind? I mean, I get asked this all the time. I see it. I don't get it. And when I question it, apparently I'm a bad person. But what is with this blind support of Ukraine? I don't get it.
Annoying.
I saw a good meme of when you were criticizing everyone for not wanting to wear a mask and calling anti-vaxxers, spreaders of misinformation, but then all of a sudden regarding Ukraine, let's go to war. I don't get it. What's with this blind support of Ukraine?
I don't know. It's just the same. It's all just the virtue signaling that they all love to participate in because they lead empty lives and they know nothing.
But why doesn't anybody question that?
Because they've been brainwashed. They've been indoctrinated to just adopt it. It's like the same thing with pro-Israel or pro-Palestine or whatever. They think they have to pick a side, it's like high school dodgeball or something.
Right. So you're critical to Israel in the way that why are we involved in
Yeah. I mean, well, there's a lot of criticism of Israel and what's going on there, because
that's a whole nother show, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
we could spend a lot of time
and something
on that.
you said before, because you talked about, what did you talk about regarding capitalism? Are you a fan of capitalism, or are you a fan of a different sort of system?
I am a capitalist because I support private property and I support the price mechanism and.
You're not an anarchist.
Markets. No, I'm not. I'm like a monarchist. I mean, ideally, I think we should have like a monarchy. But the thing is, like, we don't really have capitalism. We have this weird financial debt-based system. It's really, the root of it is the fractional reserve banking and usury and all of that. So, but I don't think there's anything wrong with prices, communicating scarcity and markets. And like I said, people owning the fruit of their labor. But then you get people that are like, I support like the derivatives and the financial system and like the stock market and all this other wacky stuff, which really has nothing to do with capitalism.
Mm-hmm. If there is one issue you can push people to look deeper into it, and this will be maybe the last question, but what would it be? Something that you would tell people to look deeper into?
Oh, what's the red? Well, there's just so
someone
much.
wanted to ask me, like, ask him about 9/11. I'm like, I probably know where he would go with that. But,
you know what's up with that.
Yeah,
it would be the Jewish lobby would be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most taboo out there thing, but it's something that people should just aware themselves of is the influence of Israel and of the Jewish lobby over the country. It's probably the most salient thing that nobody talks about. Nobody's allowed to talk about, but that's a pretty big one. But also, find God. That's the biggest thing.
Okay.
That's really the number one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Did you want to ask any? Well, someone wanted me to mention bald eagle, I guess, for whatever reason.
Bald eagle?
Yeah, they mentioned to him the great bird or something like that. The bald eagle. I don't know what they wanted me.
Why? Is there something about the eagle?
That's his MK Ultra trigger.
Oh yeah, now I'm sporting Ukraine.
I think maybe
Stand
now I'll
with
watch your
Ukraine.
live streams. Cozy.tv.
Yeah, /Nick.
What's the is there like a monthly subscription?
No, it's free.
Oh,
Whoa.
I'm definitely gonna watch.
Well, if there was a monthly subscription, they'd just take the money anyway.
Yeah.
They'd freeze those assets.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
So
true.
smart, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think that, I'd like to hear even more from you. So I'm going to start watching your show a little bit more. Thank you for coming on, Nick.
Yeah, thank you.
I know
seriously,
that.
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
I know you were
Anytime.
like driving through, but we really appreciate you coming in. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And if you're ever driving through again, you're always welcome to come on, because I think that anything that's going on in the world would be interesting to talk to you about. Tell people where to find you.
Okay, I'm at cozy.tv /Nick, Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock Central Time.
Cool.
And then you have Telegram as well.
Oh, yeah, and then Telegram, t.me /Nick J. Fuentes.
And ladies out there, you young Catholic girls,
Don't bother.
Don't
Don't bother. Just yet.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
I want to see Nick have kids. I want to see Nick get married and have kids. So young Catholic ladies out
geez,
there,
please
make
wait as
yourselves
long as you can.
eligible.
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be so cute to little Nick having kept some kids.
All right, you want to go get chicken tenders or something?
Yeah, let's
Thanks,
go.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm starving. Hear my stomach growl?